everyone, welcome to the channel. So today we'll be learning about the GitHub. So overviews are the need for GitHub, what is GitHub, GitHub repositories, clone repositories. We will know the need for GitHub. So every developer need a web or a cloud-based code hosting platform useful for version control, enables effective collaboration, downloads project and files in one go, easy evaluation of each other works. So basically, every developer who develops a project needs a web or a cloud-based code hosting platform wherein they can host the developed project. So GitHub is one of the mostly used cloud-based code hosting platform. So this must enable multiple people to work simultaneously on project. Each person edits or modifies the project. So GitHub is one such platform of choice, helps to host multiple performances and review the code. So it is a so multiple developers can use the GitHub wherein they can modify the code, they can review their code basically. GitHub has a multiple competitors. One of them is a GitLab, wherein GitLab is an open source web interface and source control platform based on Git. And Bitbucket is also one of the competitors for GitHub, wherein it chooses all of your Git and MySQL source code in one place with unlimited private repositories. So these are the code hosting services that lets us to manage our repositories. But what makes GitHub so popular? GitHub is popularly used version control platform. GitHub is an open source platform and a community is what fuels it. So the largest shared repository, easy version control, easy cloud storage. The developer who develops the project of course needs a cloud storage which will be easy to access. So basically the history of the code can be tracked in the GitHub. So what is GitHub? GitHub is a platform built on top of the distributed version control system called Git. One does not have to worry about losing data on his hard drive or managing a project across multiple computers. One can sync from anywhere. You can track issues, build and test things, and finally deploy. So what is GitHub? GitHub is a web-based Git repository hosting service wherein it is easy to manage the easy management of code, open source software for version control, effective collaboration, bug tracker. So we can track all the errors, we can track the bug when and where the error has been rectified. So we can track the history, the effective collaboration. So the multiple developers can use GitHub so for the single project, so multiple developers sitting in the different places can use the take the from the GitHub to their local system, and they can work on the same single code. So we can see the difference between the Git and the GitHub. Git is a revision control system, a tool to manage your source code history. So wherein GitHub is a hosting service for Git repositories. So in the Git, we can manage our source code history, wherein the GitHub helps the Git. It is a basically it is a platform for a Git for the hosting services, right? And then in Git, installed and maintained in your local system. Git is installed and it is maintained in our local system, wherein GitHub is exclusively cloud-based, wherein Git is a tool. Git is used as a tool, wherein GitHub is the service for projects that use Git. So GitHub is basically a service for the Git. So the next is, what is GitHub? So Git pushes or pulls data from the central server. So we can see this is the central server wherein Git can push or pull the data, where GitHub is a core hosting platform for version control collaboration. So GitHub is a core hosting platform for version control collaboration. So the multiple people can push or pull the code from GitHub. GitHub is a cloud-based platform, wherein GitHub is a company that allows you to host a central repository in a remote server. So GitHub has a remote server wherein it allows the company to host a central repository. So we can create a repository in the GitHub wherein we can push or pull the data from the same repository. We can modify the code from the same repository. We can pull the code from the repository to the local system as well. So GitHub repositories. Basic unit of GitHub. GitHub repository is a basic unit of a GitHub, wherein we can push the code to this repository. So GitHub is a platform wherein we can create a repository, we can push the code, we can rectify the errors, we can track the errors, we can track the code, basically. So most commonly, a single project repository can contain folders and files, including images, anything your project needs, readme project description. So we can also, when we create a repository in our GitHub, we can add to the repository, we can add multiple folders, multiple files, including the images or anything project needs. Whatever the project we are building, we can use anything which is related to the project to the repository. So it also contains a readme file wherein the project description will be provided. And the next contains all the project files, including documentation, and stores each file's revision history. So in the GitHub, in the GitHub repositories, we can store each file's revision history, including the documentation. Right? So we can see here, this will be a basic idea of the repository. We can create a repository, right? Next is clone repository. Go to the directory where you want to have your repository folder, usually your home, and then type the clone command for your repository. For example, to get CML CGRA type, so we have to, this is just an example to clone a project from the repository to a local, to clone a project from our repository to the local, we have to use the code provided in the repository using a git clone command, right? To update your repository with existing version, type git pull origin master to update our repository with the same version which is already existing. We have to use git pull origin master. So if it other branch than your master, then type git pull origin the branch name. So if we are using the branch name, different branch name other than the master, so we can use git pull origin with the respective branch name what we have already given, right? Then the public repository, any number or free. Anyone can see a public repository, but you choose who can commit to it. So public repository is nothing but a repository where anybody who uses GitHub can see the repository, what the repository contains, but they're not allowed to commit the changes in any ways. So they're allowed to see the repository, they're allowed to see the code, the files, folders, or images, what the repository contains, but the commit changes are restricted. Then the private repository, it is a paid subscription. By default, only you can see a private repository. You can choose who can see and commit to this repository by adding collaborators. We have a private repository as well, wherein we get it by paid subscription, wherein only the person who has created the private repository can see or check the repository, and the person who has created the private repository can only choose who can see and who can commit the changes to this repository by adding the collaborators. So we have to add the collaborators if we are creating a private repository. So we have to add the collaborators who can see the repository, and also they can access the repository, they can commit the changes, they can modify the changes in the same repository. So that's it for today. This is all about the GitHub, just the basic about the GitHub. So we'll be continuing, we'll be giving you the more informative videos in the next coming videos. So please subscribe our channel, like the video, and share it to your friends as well. Thank you so much.